Do you prefer it from behind? The question that took the Apache woman's breath away. The morning air was crisp, carrying a hint of the desert even though she was far from the mountains and plains where her ancestors had once roamed freely. The Apache woman, Aeon, walked briskly down the quiet streets of the city, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. The hustle and bustle of the urban world felt both familiar and strange to her. She had moved to the city years ago to pursue work and education, but every so often she felt the tug of her heritage, the stories of her grandparents, the lessons of her elders, and the quiet strength of her people. Aeon had always carried herself with a quiet confidence, though life had not been easy. She had faced moments of doubt, times when the world seemed too large, too unyielding. But she had always found her footing, grounding herself in the memories of her family and the traditions that reminded her of where she came from. She loved her work at the local library, where the scent of old books and polished wood reminded her of stories her grandmother once told. There, she could be surrounded by history and knowledge, while still finding small moments of peace and reflection. On that particular morning, Aeon had decided to take a detour through a small cafe tucked into a side street. The cafe was known for its quiet charm and strong coffee, a perfect spot to gather thoughts before the day began in earnest. As she entered, the warmth of the interior and the gentle hum of conversation welcomed her. The barista smiled, recognizing her as a regular, and Aeon returned the smile, nodding politely as she moved toward a small table by the window. She placed her bag carefully on the chair beside her and sat down, pulling out a notebook. She liked to write in the mornings, jotting down thoughts, plans, and sometimes reflections on her life. Her pen moved smoothly across the page as she made notes about the work she needed to do and the errands she had planned for the week. She was so absorbed in her writing that she barely noticed the man who had entered the cafe until he was standing near her table. He looked familiar, though Aeon could not immediately place him. His eyes, sharp and intense, met hers, and there was a strange weight in his gaze. She felt a flicker of recognition, a whisper of memory that she could not fully recall. He smiled politely, but there was something in his expression that made her pause. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Aeon hesitated for a moment. She was not used to being approached by strangers, especially not in such a direct way. Yet there was something oddly familiar in his presence. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself, the way his eyes seemed to hold stories he had not yet told. She nodded, gesturing to the chair across from her. As he sat down, he did not immediately speak. He seemed to study her carefully, as if trying to remember something important. Aeon felt a strange mix of curiosity and unease. She had learned long ago to trust her instincts, and her instincts were telling her to pay attention, to be cautious. After a moment, he spoke again. "I know this may sound strange," he said, "but I feel like we've met before, perhaps a long time ago." Aeon's heart skipped a beat. The sense of familiarity she had felt earlier returned, stronger now. She searched her memory, trying to place him. Her life had been full of faces and names, some fleeting, others leaving lasting impressions. Yet she could not recall him clearly. "I'm sorry," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I meet a lot of people. Can you remind me where we might have met?" He hesitated, and Aeon noticed the flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, something between apology and challenge. "It's complicated," he said softly, "but I think you'll remember once I say it." There was a pause, long enough to make the cafe seem unusually silent. Aeon felt a tension in the air, a sudden awareness that this encounter was different from any ordinary conversation. She had faced challenges before, moments when she had to navigate difficult situations with courage and clarity. She knew that her response now would matter, that it could shape the next moments in ways she could not yet see. Then, without warning, he asked a question that stopped her in her tracks. It was simple in words but heavy in implication. The question made her catch her breath, her pen hovering above the notebook, her mind racing. It was not just the words themselves, but the tone, the unexpectedness of the moment, the way it seemed to pierce through the calm she had carried with her that morning. Aeon blinked, trying to steady herself. She had faced many surprises in life, but this was unlike any she had experienced before. She felt a rush of emotions, confusion, caution, and a strange, undeniable curiosity. Her first instinct was to retreat, to close the notebook, to leave the cafe and put distance between herself and the stranger. Yet another part of her, the part that had always sought understanding and clarity, urged her to listen, to engage, to find out why this man had asked such a question. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. I don't understand what you mean," she said carefully. Her words were calm, but inside, her mind was racing. She was acutely aware of the eyes of other patrons, of the gentle clatter of cups and plates, of the hum of conversation that seemed to fade into the background. In that moment, it felt as though time itself had slowed, as though the world had contracted to the small space between her and the stranger. He nodded, as if acknowledging her reaction. "I know it's sudden," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you. I need to ask." His eyes held a mixture of sincerity and uncertainty, and for a brief moment, Aeon saw a vulnerability she had not expected. She studied him, trying to read the layers beneath the surface. There was something familiar in his posture, in the way he hesitated, in the careful way he measured his words. And yet, there was still a barrier she could not cross, a gap between what she felt and what she knew. Aeon closed her notebook slowly, placing it on the table. She realized that this moment, as unsettling as it was, also carried an opportunity, a chance to confront uncertainty, to face something that had emerged from the past, or perhaps from a memory she had not fully acknowledged. She could choose to retreat, or she could choose to engage, to navigate the conversation with her characteristic clarity and strength. The stranger waited, patient now, as if he knew she needed time to compose herself. Aeon felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. She had faced challenges before, and she had learned that the right response often came from a balance of caution and courage. She reminded herself that she was capable, that her instincts had guided her well in the past, and that she could navigate this unexpected encounter with both dignity and wisdom. Finally, she spoke again, her voice steady and measured. "If you wish to talk, we need to do it carefully," she said. "Some things are important, and some things are better understood gradually." Her words were a boundary, a gentle but firm signal that she was willing to engage, but on her own terms. The stranger nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his features. "I understand," he said. "I just hope that I can explain myself. I want you to know that nothing here is meant to harm you." Aeon studied him for a moment longer, weighing his sincerity. She sensed that, despite the shock of the question, there was honesty in his voice. Perhaps this encounter, unexpected as it was, carried a purpose she could not yet see. Perhaps it was a moment that would teach her something about trust, about courage, and about the ways in which the past and present could intersect in surprising ways. She leaned back slightly in her chair, allowing herself to breathe. The cafe, once a background to her morning routine, now felt like a stage where something significant was beginning to unfold. She did not know what the outcome would be, but she knew she would face it with the strength and clarity that had always defined her. As the stranger spoke again, this time beginning to share fragments of memory and explanation, Aeon listened carefully. She was alert, cautious, but also open to the possibility that this unexpected meeting could lead to understanding rather than fear. In that quiet, sunlit cafe, a story was beginning. A story of memory, identity, and the courage to face the unknown. And though her breath had been taken away for a moment, she found herself steadying, grounding in the certainty that she could navigate this encounter, just as she had navigated the many challenges of her life before. After that unexpected morning in the cafe, Aeon could not stop thinking about the encounter. The stranger's presence and the way he had looked at her lingered in her mind like a shadow she could not shake. She tried to focus on her work at the library, but even among the quiet shelves and the familiar scent of books, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. There was something about his eyes, something that seemed both familiar and mysterious, that refused to let her rest. Aeon had always been someone who valued clarity and understanding. She liked to know the people around her, to see intentions clearly and to trust cautiously. And yet this stranger had disrupted her sense of control. She replayed the moment in her mind, the question that had taken her breath away, the calm yet intense way he had spoken, the vulnerability behind his words. She realized that the question itself was only part of the puzzle. The greater mystery was why he had asked it, and what connection he believed existed between them. For the rest of the day, Aeon went about her routine, but the normal rhythm of life felt different. Every sound, every movement seemed to carry a faint echo of that encounter. When she walked through the library aisles, she found herself imagining the stranger sitting among the readers, observing her silently. When she helped patrons with their research, she caught herself wondering whether he had been involved in some part of her past that she had forgotten. Even her thoughts of her family, of the traditions and stories she cherished, were tinged with the sense that something unknown had entered her life, something that demanded attention. That evening, she went home and sat quietly in her apartment. The city lights glimmered outside, but they did little to calm her mind. She thought about her past, the friendships that had shaped her, the small joys and deep sorrows she had experienced, and the times she had been tested. Her life had been full of challenges, but each one had strengthened her, teaching her to trust herself and to navigate uncertainty with patience. She reminded herself that she had always faced the unknown with courage, and that this situation was no different. As she reflected, memories began to surface, faces of people from years ago, moments she had almost forgotten. There was a friend from her school days, someone she had trusted deeply, whose presence had left a mark on her life. There were experiences that had taught her about respect, boundaries, and self-awareness. She realized that this encounter with the stranger had awakened a similar sense of reflection. It was as though her mind was sifting through the past, searching for connections, searching for meaning. Aeon knew she needed advice, someone whose perspective she trusted. She called her cousin, a thoughtful and understanding woman named Luma, who had always offered guidance in difficult situations. Luma listened carefully as Aeon recounted the encounter in detail, the stranger, the question, the unsettling feeling that had stayed with her all day. "You have every right to feel unsettled," Luma said gently. "But remember, Aeon, not every question is meant to harm you. Sometimes people ask things out of confusion or because they are trying to understand something themselves. Your job is to protect yourself, yes, but also to observe and learn. There is always a reason, even if it is not immediately clear." Aeon nodded, appreciating her cousin's calm wisdom. She realized that she could not simply ignore the encounter. She needed to understand it, to approach it thoughtfully, and to set boundaries that honored her comfort and her values. Luma's words reminded her that strength often came from reflection, not just reaction, and that careful thought could guide her in moments of uncertainty. The next day, Aeon returned to the cafe, not knowing if the stranger would appear again. She arrived early, choosing a table where she could watch the entrance. Her mind was alert, balancing caution with curiosity. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room, and for a moment the world seemed calm and ordinary. And then she saw him. The stranger entered, glancing around before his eyes met hers. This time, his expression carried less surprise and more determination, as if he had anticipated her presence. Aeon felt a flicker of apprehension, but also a sense of readiness. She had spent the past day preparing herself, reflecting on her boundaries and her intentions. She would not be caught off guard again. He approached her table and asked quietly, "May I join you?" Aeon hesitated, then nodded. She wanted to hear what he had to say, to understand his presence, but on her own terms. As he sat down, there was a brief silence, filled with unspoken questions and the weight of past memories. "I realize my question yesterday startled you," he said. "I apologize for that. I should have approached things differently." His voice was calm, sincere, and carefully measured. Aeon sensed honesty in his tone, though she remained cautious. "What is it that you want to say?" she asked, her voice steady. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and vigilance, determined to understand but unwilling to be manipulated. He took a deep breath. "I believe we shared a connection long ago, though time and distance have obscured it. I came here hoping to find you, to understand if those memories are real for you as well." Aeon studied him, considering his words. She could feel the tension between truth and uncertainty, between what had been and what was now. The stranger was patient, giving her the space to respond, acknowledging her boundaries without pressing too hard. This careful approach made her respect him more, even as she remained wary. Over the next hour, they spoke cautiously, sharing fragments of memory and observation. Aeon asked questions, testing his sincerity and probing for clarity. The stranger responded thoughtfully, revealing only as much as was necessary to maintain honesty and respect. Their conversation was delicate, a dance of understanding and restraint, each aware of the potential impact of words and gestures. Through their dialogue, Aeon began to piece together the past, realizing that the connection he referenced was not harmful, but instead a fragment of shared history she had long forgotten. She remembered a group project from her early school years, a brief but meaningful friendship that had left an impression. The stranger had been a part of that circle, and his memories, though blurred by time, had guided him back to her. Aeon felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. She had anticipated confrontation or discomfort, yet the encounter had become an opportunity for understanding. She realized that the initial shock of his question was less about harm and more about the intensity of human curiosity and memory. The question had caught her off guard because it touched upon deep, unexamined parts of her past, parts she had not thought about for years. As the conversation continued, Aeon noticed a shift in her perspective. The stranger's presence was no longer threatening. It was a reminder that life was full of unexpected encounters that could challenge perceptions and evoke reflection. She felt gratitude for the opportunity to confront these memories, to explore her feelings, and to assert her boundaries with confidence and clarity. By the time the conversation ended, the cafe had quieted, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor. Aeon felt a sense of calm and control that had been absent the day before. She had faced uncertainty, navigated tension, and emerged with a clearer understanding of both the stranger and herself. She realized that her response to unexpected situations was shaped not by fear, but by her ability to reflect, to assert boundaries, and to approach challenges with intelligence and courage. Walking home, Aeon felt the weight of the morning lift. She thought about the lessons she had learned, about trust, about memory, and about the subtle power of human connection. The encounter had begun with a question that startled her, but it had evolved into a meaningful exploration of history, perception, and personal strength. She recognized that life often presented surprises, and that her resilience and awareness would guide her through them. At home, she reflected on her heritage, on the teachings of her ancestors, and on the wisdom of her elders. She realized that the principles she had learned from her family, honesty, respect, courage, were her anchor, allowing her to navigate even the most unsettling encounters. She felt proud of her ability to remain calm, to ask questions, and to engage with complexity while maintaining her integrity. That night, Aeon wrote in her notebook once more, documenting the encounter, her reflections, and the lessons she had drawn. Writing helped her process the experience, solidifying her understanding and preparing her for whatever might come next. She knew that the past, present, and future were intertwined, and that moments like these, though challenging, were opportunities for growth and insight. As she closed the notebook, Aeon felt a quiet satisfaction. She had confronted uncertainty, navigated emotional complexity, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. She knew that her life would continue to present unexpected questions and encounters, but she also knew that she had the tools to meet them with confidence, reflection, and courage. In that moment, Aeon understood something profound. The strength of a person is not measured by the absence of challenges, but by the grace and clarity with which they face them. The stranger had sparked a journey of reflection and understanding, and she had embraced it fully, guided by the wisdom of her heritage and the resilience of her spirit. A week had passed since Aeon's conversation with the stranger at the cafe, yet she found herself thinking about him almost constantly. The initial shock of his question had faded, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and caution. She had spent days reflecting on their discussion, analyzing his words, his demeanor, and the fragments of memory he had shared. Somehow he had stirred something in her, a part of her past that she had not fully remembered, and she could not shake the feeling that there was more to understand. That morning, Aeon left her apartment earlier than usual. She had decided that she could no longer avoid a deeper conversation with him. If the encounter was truly about understanding their shared past, she needed clarity. Walking through the city streets, she felt the usual rhythm of her daily life blend with anticipation. The sun glinted off the windows of tall buildings, and the air carried a faint chill that reminded her of her home in the mountains, far away from the concrete and asphalt that surrounded her now. She arrived at a quiet park, a neutral place she had chosen for their next meeting. It was open, with trees that cast long shadows across the pathways and benches scattered under the shade. It was the kind of place where one could feel both exposed and safe, visible yet distant enough to think clearly. She spotted him waiting near a bench, standing with a posture that suggested both patience and readiness. As she approached, the stranger smiled faintly. "I'm glad you came," he said. His voice was calm, controlled, but there was a hint of something beneath the surface, perhaps anticipation, perhaps concern. Aeon studied him carefully, noting the subtle tension in his shoulders and the way his eyes moved as if gauging her reaction. "I wanted to meet here," Aeon said. "Somewhere open where we can talk honestly. I need to understand why you asked that question and why you sought me out." Her voice was steady, measured. She felt a combination of caution and determination. She was ready to confront the situation fully, to assert her boundaries and seek clarity. He nodded, taking a seat on the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. "I understand," he said. "I hope I can explain. I don't want to cause discomfort, only to clarify what happened in the past and why it matters to me." Aeon listened carefully as he began to share his story. He spoke of memories from years ago, of a time when they had both been part of a small community project, a group of young people working together to document local history and traditions. His recollections were fragmented, sometimes inconsistent, but they carried a sincerity that Aeon could not ignore. She found herself recognizing moments from her own past, small interactions and shared experiences that had left impressions she had almost forgotten. The conversation was delicate, each word weighed with care. Aeon asked questions, probing gently, not to confront him aggressively, but to test his honesty and understand his perspective. She realized that the question he had asked at the cafe, though startling, was not meant to harm her. It was a reflection of his curiosity, his desire to reconnect with a past that he remembered vividly, even if she had nearly forgotten it. There was a moment when he paused, looking away toward the park's fountain. The sound of water splashing against the stone added a soft rhythm to the quiet morning. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "I know the way I phrased it was abrupt. But it was the only way I could express what I felt in that moment, the urgency of memory, the need to find clarity before it was too late." Aeon nodded slowly, processing his words. She understood now that the impact of the question was more about its intensity than its content. It had forced her to confront emotions and memories she had buried, challenging her sense of control and her understanding of her past. Yet she also felt a sense of relief. The encounter was no longer about shock or fear. It was about truth, reflection, and the careful negotiation of boundaries. "I appreciate your honesty," Aeon said, "but I need to know that this conversation respects my space, my feelings. I'm willing to listen, but only if we approach this with clarity and mutual respect." Her tone was firm yet measured, signaling that she was not merely reacting emotionally, but asserting her right to navigate the situation on her terms. He met her gaze directly, a mixture of respect and relief in his expression. "I promise," he said, "nothing here is meant to pressure you. I just hope we can find understanding." As they spoke, Aeon began to piece together a fuller picture of their shared past. She remembered the community project in more detail, the moments of teamwork, laughter, and occasional frustration. She remembered conversations, small gestures, and the way trust had been built over time. The stranger had been part of that world, and though the years had scattered their memories, his presence now was a reminder that the past was never truly lost. It lingered in fragments, waiting to be acknowledged. The conversation gradually shifted from recollection to reflection. They discussed what those experiences had taught them about trust, respect, and personal growth. Aeon found herself thinking about the lessons she had learned from her family and her culture, the importance of setting boundaries, the strength found in self-awareness, and the resilience needed to navigate life's unexpected challenges. These teachings guided her as she engaged with the stranger, allowing her to remain calm and clear-headed even when difficult topics arose. At one point, the stranger paused and looked at her intently. "I realize now that my presence might feel intrusive," he said. "I understand if you feel cautious or even uncomfortable. I just hope you can see that my intentions are sincere. I wanted to ask that question not to unsettle you, but to find the truth about our connection." Aeon took a deep breath, letting the words settle. She realized that confrontation did not have to be aggressive or hostile. It could be an exchange of honesty, a meeting of perspectives where boundaries were respected and understanding was pursued. She acknowledged her own courage, the ability to face tension without fear and to engage thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. "I can see your sincerity," Aeon said, "and I appreciate it, but I also need to know that my comfort is prioritized. That's why I wanted to meet here in a place where we can speak openly without pressure, without fear." He nodded, a faint smile crossing his features. "I understand completely, and I respect your boundaries." The rest of their conversation was more measured, a careful weaving together of past and present. They spoke of shared experiences, of moments that had shaped them, and of lessons learned from time and distance. Aeon began to feel a sense of clarity, a relief that the tension of the past days was giving way to understanding. She realized that the initial shock of the stranger's question was now transforming into an opportunity for insight and growth. As the morning passed, Aeon reflected on the way confrontation had unfolded. She had entered the encounter with caution, prepared to defend her boundaries and assert her perspective. Yet she had also allowed space for understanding, for honesty, and for reflection. This balance had empowered her, reminding her that true strength was found not in avoidance, but in the careful navigation of complex emotions and interactions. By the time they concluded their conversation, the park had grown brighter, and the city's rhythm had resumed around them. Aeon felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced a situation that had once seemed overwhelming, and she had emerged with clarity, control, and insight. She recognized that confrontation was not merely about conflict. It was about communication, honesty, and the ability to maintain integrity while engaging with others. As they parted, the stranger offered a respectful nod. "Thank you," he said, "for listening, for trusting me to speak honestly. I hope we can carry this understanding forward." Aeon nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she replied, "for respecting my boundaries and for helping me see the past more clearly." Walking home, Aeon felt the weight of uncertainty lift further. She thought about the lessons of the encounter, how confrontation, when approached thoughtfully, could lead to growth rather than conflict. She realized that her response had not only clarified the stranger's intentions, but it also reinforced her own strength and self-awareness. That evening, Aeon returned to her notebook, writing down her reflections, the details of their conversation, and the insights she had gained. Writing allowed her to process the encounter fully, transforming an initially unsettling experience into a source of personal growth and understanding. She recognized that life often presented challenges in unexpected forms, and that her ability to navigate them with grace and clarity was a reflection of her resilience. As she closed the notebook, Aeon felt a deep sense of empowerment. She had confronted tension, engaged with honesty, and maintained her boundaries throughout. The encounter had begun as a moment of shock, but it had become a turning point, a lesson in communication, courage, and the quiet power of self-awareness. Aeon understood something vital that night. Confrontation was not an act of aggression but a path to clarity. By facing difficult situations with thoughtfulness and integrity, she could navigate life's uncertainties with confidence. She felt ready to meet whatever came next, grounded in her strength, her heritage, and the knowledge that she had the courage to face challenges head-on. After the encounter in the park, Aeon felt a quiet change within herself. The weeks of reflection, conversation, and careful navigation of uncertainty had left a mark on her spirit. She could sense that something significant had shifted, an awareness of her own strength, the power of boundaries, and the importance of understanding the past in order to live fully in the present. Her mornings began with a renewed sense of purpose. She walked through the city streets with a calm confidence, noticing details she had often overlooked: the way sunlight glinted off windows, the distant hum of traffic, the laughter of children playing in a park. Life seemed fuller now, richer with possibilities, and she realized that her perspective had broadened. What had once felt like routine and ordinary now carried the weight of awareness and appreciation. At work, Aeon approached her duties with the same thoughtfulness she had brought to her personal reflections. She arranged books on the library shelves with care, helped visitors navigate the stacks, and shared stories with young readers who looked up to her as a guide and mentor. She found satisfaction not only in her responsibilities, but in the quiet influence she had on those around her. The lessons from her encounter, the importance of honesty, boundaries, and reflection, were now subtly shaping the way she engaged with others. One afternoon, a group of young women from her community came to the library to conduct research for a school project. Aeon noticed their curiosity and enthusiasm, and she felt a strong desire to support them. She remembered the guidance she had received from her elders, the importance of passing on knowledge and wisdom, and she realized that this was an opportunity to make a meaningful impact. "Remember," she said gently, guiding them through the books and resources, "the way you ask questions matters just as much as the answers you seek. Always listen carefully, think before you act, and trust your instincts. That's how you navigate life with confidence." The young women nodded, absorbing her words with a mix of respect and curiosity. Aeon felt a quiet satisfaction as she saw the spark of understanding in their eyes. She realized that personal growth was not only about internal reflection, but also about sharing wisdom and helping others develop their own sense of strength and awareness. Even in her personal life, Aeon began to notice subtle changes. She spent more time connecting with family and friends, recognizing the importance of community and shared experiences. She called her cousin Luma regularly, discussing not only her work and daily life, but also her reflections on personal growth and emotional resilience. These conversations became a source of inspiration, reinforcing the values she had long cherished and encouraging her to continue exploring her own path with clarity and courage. Aeon also dedicated time to reconnecting with her heritage. She visited a local cultural center that celebrated native traditions, learning more about Apache history, language, and art. She found comfort and strength in these moments, understanding that her identity was a living part of her life, not just a distant memory. The lessons from her ancestors, honesty, courage, respect, and resilience, resonated deeply as she reflected on the recent encounters that had challenged and shaped her. As the weeks passed, Aeon noticed a growing confidence in herself. She approached social interactions with clarity, understanding that her words and actions carried meaning and that her boundaries were to be respected. She felt a newfound freedom in expressing her thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment, recognizing that her voice had value and deserved to be heard. One afternoon, while walking through the city market, Aeon encountered a situation that tested her growth. A disagreement arose between two vendors over a misunderstanding, and the tension began to escalate. Many bystanders looked on, uncertain how to respond. Aeon stepped forward calmly, using the skills she had honed over the past weeks. She listened carefully to both sides, asked thoughtful questions, and guided the conversation toward understanding and compromise. By the time the situation was resolved, the vendors expressed gratitude, and the onlookers seemed inspired by her composure and insight. Aeon realized that her personal growth was not only internal, but also external. It shaped how she engaged with the world, how she helped others navigate challenges, and how she fostered understanding and respect in her community. At home that evening, Aeon reflected on the changes she had noticed within herself. She recognized that personal growth was not a linear process, but a journey filled with reflection, learning, and self-awareness. The encounter with the stranger, once shocking and unsettling, had become a catalyst for this growth. It had forced her to confront uncertainty, assert her boundaries, and navigate complexity with grace and intelligence. She also understood the importance of teaching others. The young women she mentored, the colleagues she guided, and even the strangers she encountered in daily life were all part of a larger circle where lessons could be shared and wisdom passed on. Aeon felt a sense of responsibility, not in a burdensome way, but as a natural extension of the growth she had experienced. By helping others, she reinforced her own understanding and contributed to the strength of her community. Her evenings became a time for reflection and creativity. She continued to write in her notebook, documenting not only the events of the day, but also her thoughts, insights, and feelings. Writing became a practice of self-discovery, allowing her to process experiences and translate lessons into actionable understanding. She noted the subtle shifts in her perspective, the moments of courage, and the ways she had learned to approach life with calm and clarity. Aeon also made time for quiet contemplation, sitting by her window as the sun set and the city lights began to sparkle. She thought about her ancestors, the women who had taught resilience, courage, and patience. She realized that personal growth was a continuation of their legacy, a way to honor the lessons they had passed down and to carry them forward into her own life. One evening, she received a letter from the stranger, delivered to her apartment. It was brief, expressing gratitude for the conversations they had shared and the clarity that had emerged from their interactions. He acknowledged her strength, her insight, and her ability to navigate complexity with grace. Aeon read the words carefully, feeling a sense of closure and understanding. The letter reinforced her realization that confrontation and difficult conversations could lead to growth, understanding, and mutual respect. She placed the letter in her notebook, alongside her reflections and notes. It became a symbol of the journey she had undertaken, not just the encounter with the stranger, but the process of reflection, self-awareness, and personal growth that had followed. She recognized that life would continue to present challenges, questions, and unexpected encounters, but she felt confident in her ability to face them with wisdom and courage. Aeon's life began to take on a new rhythm, one infused with purpose, clarity, and awareness. She approached each day with mindfulness, attentive to her surroundings, her interactions, and her own thoughts and feelings. She recognized the value of her heritage, the lessons of her family, and the importance of self-respect and boundaries. These principles guided her choices, shaping her actions and responses in meaningful ways. As she walked through the city streets, she noticed the beauty in ordinary moments, the laughter of children, the warmth of sunlight on her face, the gentle sway of trees in the breeze. Life, she realized, was a series of encounters, lessons, and opportunities for growth. Each experience, whether challenging or comforting, contributed to the person she was becoming. Aeon also began to share her experiences with a wider audience. She spoke at community events, workshops, and cultural gatherings, discussing the importance of personal growth, reflection, and resilience. Her words resonated with many, especially young women seeking guidance in navigating complex social situations. She became a mentor, a role model, and a source of inspiration, demonstrating through her own life the power of courage, self-awareness, and integrity. Through these activities, Aeon reinforced the lessons she had learned. She saw firsthand how reflection, patience, and thoughtful action could create positive change. She realized that growth was not just an internal process, but one that radiated outward, influencing relationships, communities, and even the broader world. One quiet evening, as she sat by the window with her notebook open, Aeon reflected on the journey she had taken since the initial encounter. She remembered the shock, the uncertainty, and the tension she had felt. She also recognized the courage, insight, and strength that had emerged as a result. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been transformative, teaching her the value of reflection, communication, and self-respect. Aeon understood that personal growth was ongoing. It was not a destination but a journey, one that required mindfulness, courage, and a willingness to engage with life honestly. She felt gratitude for the experiences that had shaped her, for the lessons learned from her ancestors, family, and community, and for the moments of insight that had guided her toward understanding and empowerment. As the night deepened and the city quieted, Aeon closed her notebook and looked out at the stars. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she was prepared to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. Her journey of personal growth had strengthened her spirit, clarified her values, and deepened her understanding of herself and the world around her. She had learned that true empowerment came from reflection, courage, and the careful balance of boundaries and openness. And in that quiet moment, Aeon felt ready, not just for the challenges of the present, but for the unknowns of the future, confident in her ability to face life with wisdom, integrity, and the quiet strength that had always been part of her, waiting to be fully realized. The days that followed felt lighter for Aeon. The weight of uncertainty that had accompanied the stranger's unexpected question had lifted, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. She moved through her life with calm confidence, aware of her boundaries, her strength, and the lessons she had learned from recent events. The experience had left a mark, not one of fear, but one of growth, understanding, and resilience. Aeon continued her work at the library, yet even ordinary tasks seemed to carry new significance. Each interaction with visitors, each question answered, and each story shared became an opportunity for reflection and connection. She noticed the subtle ways she had changed, the patience in her voice, the care in her guidance, and the quiet assurance in her decisions. These qualities had always been within her, but now they were clearer, stronger, and fully acknowledged. Outside of work, Aeon devoted herself to her community in meaningful ways. She mentored young women, sharing the wisdom she had gained not only from life's lessons but from her heritage. She spoke about self-respect, courage, and the importance of boundaries, emphasizing that true strength came from understanding oneself and engaging with life thoughtfully. Her mentorship was gentle yet firm, offering guidance without imposing, encouraging her mentees to discover their own voices and paths. One afternoon, Aeon organized a small gathering at a local cultural center. She invited members of her community, including young adults who had participated in educational and cultural projects. The gathering was informal, filled with laughter, storytelling, and shared reflections. Aeon spoke about her journey of self-discovery and the lessons she had learned from navigating uncertainty and confrontation. Her words resonated with the attendees, who appreciated the honesty and sincerity in her voice. She emphasized that growth was not linear and that challenges could often become opportunities for learning. "Life will bring unexpected moments," she said, "moments that test your patience, your courage, and your understanding. But each challenge is also a chance to reflect, to grow, and to strengthen yourself. Remember, the way you respond is more important than the situation itself." As the gathering concluded, several young women approached her, expressing gratitude for her guidance. They shared stories of their own challenges, asking for advice and reassurance. Aeon listened attentively, offering thoughtful encouragement and practical suggestions. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, recognizing that her experiences could inspire others and that her growth could ripple outward, impacting lives beyond her own. Even in her personal life, Aeon noticed the changes in herself. She approached relationships with greater clarity and intentionality, appreciating honesty, respect, and mutual understanding. She spent time with friends and family, strengthening bonds that had always been important to her. Conversations were richer, deeper, and more meaningful, reflecting the insight and self-awareness she had cultivated over the past months. One evening, Aeon decided to revisit the cafe where the journey had begun. She walked slowly through the familiar streets, reflecting on the path she had traveled since that first unexpected encounter. The cafe had changed little. The same warm interior, the same hum of conversation, the same comforting smell of coffee and baked goods, but Aeon herself had transformed. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her growth had come not from the place, but from the courage and reflection she had brought with her. As she entered, the barista smiled and greeted her warmly. Aeon returned the smile, acknowledging the small moments of continuity that anchored her in her daily life. She chose a seat by the window, allowing herself a moment to observe the world outside. People walked by, carrying their own stories, unaware of the personal journey unfolding in the cafe. Aeon felt a connection to them, a recognition that life was a shared experience, filled with both challenges and opportunities for growth. While she sat there, she received a brief message from the stranger. It was simple, respectful, and reflective, expressing gratitude for the clarity they had reached in their conversations and for the understanding that had been shared. Aeon read the message carefully, feeling a sense of closure and peace. The encounter that had once unsettled her was now a part of her story, a lesson in courage, reflection, and the power of personal boundaries. She responded briefly, acknowledging the message and expressing her own appreciation for the opportunity to gain clarity and insight. There was no lingering tension, no sense of unease, only a mutual recognition of growth and understanding. The message symbolized the transformation of the initial shock into a meaningful and constructive experience. Aeon spent the rest of the afternoon reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. She thought about the lessons of her ancestors, the guidance of her family, and the experiences that had shaped her life. She recognized that each encounter, whether challenging or comforting, contributed to her growth. She had learned to navigate complexity with grace, to assert her boundaries with confidence, and to engage with honesty and empathy. In the following weeks, Aeon noticed a continued ripple effect in her life. The young women she mentored were growing more confident, expressing their thoughts with clarity and approaching challenges with self-assurance. Her friends and colleagues acknowledged the calm and wisdom she brought to her interactions. Even in small, everyday moments, Aeon felt the power of her growth, how reflection, courage, and self-awareness could influence the world around her. She also took time to engage in creative pursuits. Aeon explored traditional Apache crafts, painting, and storytelling, weaving the lessons she had learned into her creative expression. Each piece she created was infused with reflection, resilience, and a sense of purpose. Her art became a medium for sharing her journey, both with herself and with others who might encounter her work. Aeon realized that life was not about avoiding difficult moments, but about embracing them with clarity and courage. The encounter that had once taken her breath away had been a catalyst for transformation, teaching her the value of honesty, reflection, and self-respect. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident, equipped to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as she walked along a quiet city street, Aeon paused to observe the stars emerging in the night sky. She felt a sense of gratitude, not just for the resolution of her past encounters, but for the journey itself. Every experience, every challenge, and every moment of reflection had contributed to the person she had become. She understood that life was a series of interconnected moments, each carrying lessons and opportunities for growth. Aeon felt a deep sense of peace. She no longer feared the unexpected or the unknown. She knew that she had the tools to navigate life with clarity, courage, and integrity. The lessons she had learned from her heritage, her family, and her own experiences had strengthened her spirit and prepared her for the future. In her heart, Aeon carried a quiet determination to continue living thoughtfully and intentionally. She would face challenges with confidence, approach interactions with honesty and empathy, and mentor others with care and insight. She understood that personal growth was ongoing, a continuous journey of reflection, learning, and self-awareness. As the city lights flickered and the night deepened, Aeon walked home, feeling a sense of completion. The stranger's question, which had once startled her, had become a pivotal moment in her life, a turning point that had guided her toward clarity, understanding, and empowerment. She realized that life's most challenging moments often carried the greatest opportunities for growth, and that courage, reflection, and self-respect were the keys to navigating them successfully. Back in her apartment, Aeon sat by the window, writing in her notebook one final time. She recorded the journey she had taken, the lessons she had learned, and the ways she had grown. Her words reflected not only her experiences, but also her hope for the future, a future where she could live with confidence, integrity, and the quiet strength of self-awareness. She closed the notebook, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The story that had begun with an unexpected question had transformed into a journey of insight, reflection, and empowerment. Aeon understood that her life was her own to navigate, shaped by her choices, her courage, and the lessons she embraced along the way. As she looked out at the city below, Aeon felt a quiet joy. She was ready for whatever the future might bring, confident in her ability to face challenges, to foster understanding, and to live fully in the present. The journey had been long and sometimes difficult, but it had led her to a place of clarity, strength, and hope. In the end, Aeon realized that life's most unexpected questions were not obstacles to fear, but opportunities to grow, to reflect, and to embrace the strength within. She carried that understanding with her as she stepped into the night, ready to continue her journey with courage, wisdom, and a heart full of purpose.